What is up, everybody, and welcome back to what could be described as a different kind of video for me. If you're new here, welcome. If you guys like the content and want to see more like it, maybe consider subscribing down below. A lot of you guys that drop by my channel aren't subscribed, and it really does help me out. Now, first off, I want to say sorry for this video coming out late, guys. I know it really messed with my upload schedule. The reason for the late upload is due to me, honestly, just not being happy with the video. I spent a lot of time. I wrote a script, I recorded it, I was editing the video, and while I was in the midst of editing the video, trying to get it uploaded on my regular schedule, I was so unhappy with the script that I had written and what I was working with that I just couldn't keep going with it. So I said, screw the algorithm, decided to throw everything away, rewrote the whole script, and remade this video for you guys. So if you like it, please drop a like down below. I did do a lot of work on it, and once again, sorry for the late upload. Without any further ado, though, let's get into the video. So back in November, I revealed my brand new sim rig. With the promise of making content over the winter to keep my mind fresh and provide you guys with racing content during my off season. I made my first few videos in keeping with the theme I really like, me being a wannabe. What is a wannabe, you may ask? Well, I define a wannabe as someone who wants to be something they are not currently. Pretty straightforward. Don't know if the dictionary has a definition for it. That's not the point. What does that mean for my first sim videos, though? It means they were very bad.
What the hell is even that?
Now, they weren't the worst thing. They did exactly what I wanted them to do. They were focusing on where I started my journey with sim racing. This was the moment that I wanted to capture when making these videos. But all good things must come to an end. After filming my last sim video, I decided it was time to put in the effort it takes to not be terrible at sim racing. Let's be honest with ourselves. You can only watch someone be terrible at something so many times before it stops being entertaining. So this is what it takes to go from an average Joe to an above average Joe in sim racing. Upon uploading that last video, I decided to put 50 hours into sim racing in 1 month's time. These had to be new hours too. Any hours that I had put prior to starting this did not count. So I needed to find out how many hours I had already played. The next thing was to turn to the end-all be-all source of mastering the art of sim racing. Unfortunately, Google only told me things I already knew. So armed with absolutely no new knowledge, it was time to set up a plan. Step 1. I needed a car and a track. Not just any car. It needed to match my criteria. It needs to be slow, but not too slow. You want something that gives you time to react and correct things, as well as it should allow you to learn the track without every corner coming up on you like a surprise party you didn't want. The car also needs to be hard to handle. This may sound crazy, but think about it this way. Yes, I could just go grab a GT3 car and have it stick to the road and take every corner extremely fast, but what do you learn from that? You want the car to fight you, and most importantly, you want it to punish you for poor inputs. You want the car that is not forgiving if you turn too quickly or go back on throttle too fast. This way, you're forced to learn smoother inputs, which in turn will make you faster. Don't fall for the trap that many new sim drivers fall for. Don't just grab the fastest and most forgiving car on the field. You may feel faster, but your lap times will be poor for that car. You won't have the experience or knowledge needed to drive that car consistently or smoothly, since you'll have never learned the disciplines of throttle control or steering input. Disciplines you're forced to learn in a slower, harder to control cars. So what car did I go with? That's right, the 1M. It's a great little car, but it lacks a lot compared to the Lamborghinis and Ferraris, and obviously doesn't really have anything in the department of downforce. The choice of track is less important, but pick something that's easy to learn that still forces you to be technical. I wouldn't pick anything like the Nordschleife for its complexity, or Monza for the opposite reason. Step 2 is to start practicing. This means jumping into the car and track and learning as much as possible, taking note of the braking zones, turn-in points, car's response to your inputs. Honestly, this is hard. It was difficult to learn all of these things at first because your braking zones could suddenly change once another element, such as steering inputs, is better understood. It took me many crashes and spins before I even began to run decently. And by decently, I mean not crashing in literally every corner. I saw the first day on Laguna Seca running my best time of a 150.019, disappointingly close to a sub 150. But now let's say you've been running the track for an hour or two and you've got your times down. That doesn't mean it's over. No, it's just getting started. The idea here is to run it over and over and over and over and over and over and... Sorry, zoned out there. Point is, it's boring, but it's practice. It's getting used to everything and understanding the ins and outs before changing the variable on yourself. But after a lot of practice, you should be able to get your times down. I got my times down to a consistent 147s, 148s. There was also a little bit of running with other cars on the track to break some monotony just so that I don't get completely bored, which is completely fine. But the cars should keep in the spirit of the slower, harder to control at first. I ran things like the Audi S1, Nissan 370Z, and a little bit of an oddball, the Porsche 911 Carrera S. For me, after 6 or so hours on the same types of cars on the same track over a period of a couple days, it becomes a lot more intuitive when and where to turn, and most importantly, how your inputs on the rig affect the car, making it feel much more natural. With all of that now figured out, step 3. This is a racing simulator, isn't it? What better next step than to actually start racing? Taking the same car and track pairing once again to avoid changing too many variables, it's time to set up a race. It's honestly really simple. Just do what I did. Go to the settings, put the AI to what you want, make sure it's a fair race by making sure they all have the same car that you have. I set it up to have a qualifying time, and then I start. The next part is very important. You spend the entire qualifying session running high 147s, while the AI run low 142s. You qualify last, continue to the race, get left so far behind you quit because it's no different than if you were running alone, but you save the replay. From there, you then watch how the AI drive in the replay. You take some pointers, go back into free practice, improve your time to a 146.460, still feel completely defeated because you're 4 seconds behind medium AI, and you felt really good about yourself until that point. Then you quit and go to bed. The next morning you wake up with a new wave of energy, hop back on the game and realize the game didn't actually ever save the difficulty you set up in the last race, and instead of racing medium bots, you were actually racing bots at 100% difficulty. Now you can do all of that, or of course you can just make sure that the race saves the bot's difficulty the first time and save yourself the existential crisis. But where's the fun in that? It's very important that you keep the bot's difficulty difficult enough that they are capable of beating you, but not so difficult that you can't keep up or beat them. Once you find a nice balance, there's plenty of learning to be had with the battles for position throughout the race and trying to beat the AI. Once you feel really comfortable with racing though, step 4. Now that all the essentials have been ingrained in your subconscious, it's time to start branching out. With the ability to drive the car smoothly and consistently, it's okay to start playing with things like setup, as well as branching out to faster cars and expand your track knowledge. I started with a little bit of dabbling in the new cars and tracks, GT cars, sports cars, LMP cars, and tracks like Spa, Imola, Brands Hatch. But after having played around with a lot of cars and tracks, I then decided I wanted to learn the process of setups, as a good setup is going to be very important for how much faster you run than everyone else. You won't become a master by playing with it for the first time, but it's good to start. Keeping it simple, I went back to the same car and the same track from the start because it was the one I knew how to drive the best, and it would be a lot easier to pick out what changes had what effects on the car, whether it be positive or negative. The first thing I did, I realized I had been reading the tire pressures wrong the whole time. I was under the impression that Assetto Corsa told you the tire pressure of what it would be when it got hot. But no, it was telling the tire pressures when it was cold, so all of the temps I was reading were the cold temps. I had been running this entire time on 35 psi cold tires. I immediately dropped that down to a much more sensible cold pressure, and it made a world of difference. I set a new personal best of a 144.718, up almost 2 seconds from my previous personal best. Once you've mastered the basics, this step is really just about exploring new things and seeing how your skills stack up against others. testing yourself, and learning skills that you now have more interest in. Now for me, it was about this time that my friend invited me to a Discord group full of his friends who played racing games from time to time. They invited me to what was my first ever online race with people. It was something I had never done before. Indy cars on Indy. It wasn't that hard to get used to. After a few laps, I found a trick that got me running fast and consistent, landing me P2 in qualifications. Moving now right into the race, off the line I was able to take P1 from the guy who had gotten P1 in qualification, and I started to put a gap on the field. I ran first for 6 laps before he caught me, we traded places for a lap, I traded places with him for a lap, and then we traded places yet again, putting me in second for the second to last lap. I started to regain on him, and I was set to trade with him one last time coming into the last lap, which would have put me first place for my first race. It was about this time we were catching the back marker, and we were set to lap him. He thought it would be funny to turn into us as we passed. He missed the guy who was in P1 and only hit me. I was 1/10 of a second behind the guy in P1, 8 seconds ahead of the guy in 3rd. I dropped all the way down to 6th. I think 4th and 5th felt a little bad because I was able to finish in 4th, because as I got to the finish line, both 4th and 5th were almost completely stopped. Finishing 4th wasn't the end of the world, but it still was not the 1st or 2nd place that I had very much so deserved from my first race, souring my mood just a little. But that's just part of racing online. The rest of my 50 hours in this challenge were spent mostly playing with this group, doing a lot of online races in GT3 cars, as well as me finally taking home my first clean and fair victory at Fuji in Formula Renault cars that could be described as a worst start ever. Yeah, we didn't even make it into turn 1. So I did it. I went from an average Joe to above average Joe in just 1 month and 50 hours of playing sim racing games. Except I actually didn't. You see, the video ended up taking me more time than I had expected, and I actually took a month and a half to get the 50 hours, as well as obviously 3 months to finally make the video, because it's been a while since my last sim video. Then of course there's the fact that it's being uploaded late, not on my normal upload schedule, because I threw away the whole script and started again the day before it was supposed to come out, but let's not dwell on that. I have continued to keep up with sims and now have many more hours in them than the 50 that I put in the challenge. A lot of the time I have spent in them have been with my new friends in different private and public online lobbies. We're even setting up to do a little mini league with Discord in the month of August, doing 9 races in Formula Renault. So here's my takeaway from the experience. If you want to get good, or at least just not suck at sim racing, the best and most important thing to do is learn the fundamentals. The process I laid out here took inspiration from how you learn to race in real cars. It focuses on learning the basic fundamentals through using equipment that is sensitive to errors. In real racing, if you start as a kid that is, you'll most likely start in go-karts. They are slow, have limited to no gears, they're extremely sensitive to brake input, love to oversteer, and as a whole, just aren't forgiving if you don't drive them right. These kids are forced at a young age to learn how to drive these karts smoothly in order to move up to better opportunities, which is what makes them such great drivers when they get older. The fundamentals stay. It may be tempting to jump into something that's high downforce, extremely forgiving when you first start, because otherwise it can come across as boring. But if you don't ever get punished for poor driving, you'll never learn the skills needed to get faster. If your goal is to just jump into these games and have fun, then by all means, go play the game and just have fun. You bought it, play it how you want it. But my channel isn't about the casual side of driving. Sure, my content can be enjoyed by someone who just likes to take their car out to a track day, and I welcome those who love to just drive for the fun. But for me, my goal has always been on perfecting the craft. The fun comes from perfecting something. I love spending hours on the same track running lap after lap, looking for that one little thing that just makes me ever so slightly faster. So if you're like me, and you don't want to settle for anything less than the absolute best, then I would recommend you follow the steps that I did. Practice is the most important part of mastering anything. Be it an instrument, a job, or a sport, it takes many countless hours of practice to master any skill. Anyway guys, once again, if you like the content, consider subscribing down below. I look forward to making more sim videos going forward from here. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.